Welcome to Founder Friday. I'm Amy Luber with Relatively Sales, here with Alyson Caffrey, CEO of Operations Agency. Thank you for joining us, Alyson.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Amy. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be connected. We are connected through, of course, Trainual. We love the
Mhm.
Trainual documentation system. And today I would love to just chat about, some of the best practices that you've seen since you've worked with so many different startups and business owners on, why documenting early in the stage of your company is so important to, scalability and just getting your process improvements down.
Yeah. So first, I started operations agency. I love to say out of need because this is such an overlooked piece of folks' businesses, right? They start a business and they're really excited to sell and they're really excited to start to get some results for folks. And then all of a sudden, they end up in this position where instead of doing the work, right, they're actually running a business, right? They're kind of juggling both. And so that time is such a difficult time for a lot of founders, a lot of, moving into like that CEO type of role. And
Mhm.
so I've been in ops for the last 6 years, and I was at a 9 to 5, actually as an ops manager. And I started transitioning out of that position. And all of my contacts at that position were like, can you please do for me what you've been doing for this company? I mean, we really, really need it. We're in this growth mode. We really want to launch these new products. We really want to hire these new team members, right? Insert growth goal here. And they
Yep.
needed some documentation. So one of the biggest things that we realized, I think, early on was that not only do folks really need documentation, but they really need it done for them, right? They really need it to be something that they don't have to think about. We create basically like a process for creating processes really, really early on, a way that we
Yeah.
can basically say, hey, listen, here's how we upload specific files, here's how we file specific things, like even some of those basic needs. Because once you are ready to hire someone on your team, you don't want to be in a position where you're like, well, what do I tell them to do? Or you spend hours and hours and hours training them. And I think that's where Amy, you and I really relate when it comes to training. Well, using that platform as a way to kind of impart knowledge onto our team, but we have no way of doing that if we don't document procedures, right?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. And I think getting into that practice early is great, but bringing in that third party for a third party perspective on just kind of giving you that mentorship, right? Just in case you're missing an area or you're just not able to look at the whole organizational process because you're maybe the CEO and you're really heads down in some of the visionary kind of things, right? It's important to
Mhm.
not get drug into the weeds as a leader, so we don't want you to do that. But what we do want is the support for the organization to really work like a well-oiled machine moving forward, right? And be very scalable and nimble in its growth.
Yeah, most definitely. And something I see quite often in terms of just like, getting above the business, right? We often are in positions where day to day, right? We just do the thing that's familiar because we think it's going to be the fastest instead of just pressing pause for a minute and saying like, okay, if I reorganize this thing, right? It might take me a month, but down the line it's going to net save me, let's just say 20 hours a week or something, right? So even just asking ourselves those questions on a solid cadence is
Yeah.
really a great reason to pull someone in the loop. Another great thing is just being able to have that type of support for your number two. If you have brought someone in already, maybe prematurely before you started documenting or before you really have some rules of engagement around project management or any of those kind of administrative things, right, operationally in your business, you might just be in a position where you're really looking for that person to be mentored, brought up, like, right, understand the
Yeah.
whole kind of, the whole inner workings of your business.
Yeah. And at what point, so, because you've worked with so many different verticals and different types of clients, like overall, where do you think the best point in time would be to start, implementing these kind of processes that you're talking about?
Yeah, so that's a question, frankly, I get fairly often. I would say if you are in a position where you've been getting results for clients
Mhm.
consistently for, let's just say, about 6 months or about a quarter, right? You've been doing the same kind of rinse and repeat, and you're in a position where you've really nailed down a great way to deliver a quality service or a quality product, and you've been getting rave reviews, right? If you've got something good going on, I would say write it down. There are so many different times in our business where we're going to need to to package up some of these procedures. A lot of them are how-tos, some of them are management processes, and a fair amount actually are going to be strategic processes, right? Your actual general IP, right? How you're going to be delivering something. And so getting that down as soon as possible, I think is in everyone's best interest, because there can be multiple iterations, right? You find out new, facts, or you go through new experiences, and you can always edit and amend and grow and get better. But we never really have that foundation unless we start to lay it nice and early on, especially if you're starting to hire new team members, especially if you're in a position where you're a startup, you've got a budget, right? You've got a way to deliver a quality service. You've got to hire new people. A lot of businesses, post COVID are in this kind of, situation where they either need to drop half their team or they need to hire double their team, right? And so both actually present us with a pretty solid, problem, because if we don't have our core set of procedures, right, we can't either for the team who's losing, redistribute some, responsibilities and priorities, and for the team that's gaining, right, we have no training to give these inbound people, so they're actually worth a lot less than what we're paying, them in salary at that point. So it's really, kind of that inflection point of like inviting others right into the home.
Yeah, that's the collaboration piece that I think is one of the biggest outcomes. It's not just actually sitting down and documenting. Sometimes when I talk to people about doing, documenting sales playbooks, so we just need to write down our sales process. It's like, well, actually, it's more than that, because while we are documenting, and that's important, it's the collaboration, between departments, and really understanding where the customer is, understanding all the different touch points along the customer journey. And then, boiling that down into something really actionable for a particular sales department. But then it also goes into really, making sure that we document and as a team identify the key performance indicators, right, that we're holding ourselves accountable to. And I think that is equally a huge win when you can kind of come together and make sure you're all on the same page with that. How do you handle the KPI conversation?
And I love that you brought that in, because it's such an integral part of knowing whether or not our process is going well, right? Like, I'm sure you've seen this before, right? Like you whiteboard out a sales process and then you're like, whoa, the baton was dropped here and here, right? But you don't know that unless you are, first of all, clear on the process. And second of all, clear on the milestones or tracking like how things are going, right? So I love bringing key performance indicators in, because typically when you look at a process, right, there's a result that thing creates, and it's typically trackable. Right. Yeah. So I would say if you're starting with, processes, try to think about what is the definition of done, or what is the outcome that this needs to create. Right. And then in that case, that's a milestone or a trackable thing that you can say, okay, this is going well, right? It should take this person about 2 hours to do this thing. And then here's kind of the end cap or the milestone or the KPI. Right. And there's kind of two ways you can look at KPIs. You can look at, first and foremost, like leading key performance indicators. So this is like cold calls, right? In your case, like if you guys are looking at, growing a sales team, you're in a position where you're looking at cold calls as a leading indicator to closing more deals, right? Which would be a lagging indicator for a KPI. So I would encourage business owners to be looking at both of those things. Yeah. Truthfully, it's really, really challenging at the end, right, to take a look at, let's just say, how many, deals we closed or how much revenue we brought in. And then we try to reverse engineer, and we don't know, because we're not tracking how many calls we've made. We're not tracking how many people have gone through our sales system or our sales pipeline. We're not tracking any of those leading indicators. And so some of those things can start to get lost in the weeds, and we could be scratching our head, even if we are tracking some numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I love that. And it's based on his historical information, right? But if you're in early stage, you're running so many experiments. Oftentimes that is not always the true. History is great, but it's not always the true benchmark that you can run off of. So
yeah, absolutely.
Look at both for sure. Well, if people wanted to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to, reach out? And feel free to, share a little bit about your partnerships and things like that.
Yeah. So we work a lot, obviously, structuring businesses with documentation and with operational assets and things. We work a lot with team training. The best way to get in touch with me and find out a little bit more about what we do is by going to operationsagency.com. We've got a resources page with a lot of really cool information around documentation, different trainings, different workshops, different free things that you can download to kind of help you get started if you're in this really early phase of documentation, or frankly, if you're just, kind of maybe overdue for systems, you can also start to take a look at some of these things. But truthfully, we like to help businesses cover kind of the soup to nuts, like back of house administrative operations for the business, because frankly, we know A, it's unsexy, and B, it's so needed, right? I think that's something like this, although unpopular in kind of, how do I put it? Unpopular in like reputation, right? Is really something that once you have figured out, right, your workday just goes from like stress level here to stress level here. And it's amazing.
Yeah, I always tell, my clients and any founders that are listening to this today, I just want to underscore, outsource as soon as you can on some of these tactical items, because you cannot spend your time on it. You need to be high level strategy. You need to be going to execute sales. You need to be going to test and make sure that you're running the right, revenue playbook. But the stuff underneath that, not because it's less important, but because it's more tactical and it requires a huge amount of focus. Like, push that to people that do this day in and day out, because their mind is already in that track of being able to deliver that. So I love what you guys do. I think it's a great need.
Yeah. And something that I think a founder won't want to hear is that the earlier we can start to delegate some of these things, and the more familiar that these folks on our team or outsourced can get with some of the tasks that we're giving them, they're going to start to become better than you are at doing them, which I know is difficult to hear as a founder, but also it's really comforting to know that actually my team can ship better work sometimes than I can, because I just need that blocked focus time, which frankly, I'm sure we all know as owners, like you just don't have.
Yeah. And scaling through your model, through that fractional model, is oftentimes affordable in those early stages, where you can get going faster on that and just build up that momentum so much faster than, trying to hire and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, thanks, Amy.
That's
I
right.
appreciate you having this conversation. Again, I feel like it's such an unsexy topic, operations and documentation, but it's so important.
Yes, exactly. Well, thanks for joining us on Founder Friday, Alyson. I will make sure we include your links below in this video. And for the rest of you on Founder Friday, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to this series, and you'll get access to the remaining Fridays in September. I'm doing a half hour of free sales advice every Friday, so that you can come ask your questions and get answers to them as you conclude the week. So hope to see you guys soon, and appreciate your time, Alyson.
Thanks, Amy.